caught between love and wealth. My fiancé's family framed him to keep us apart. Now I'm racing to clear his name. Hi, I'm Chloe, and this is the story of how my ordinary life took an extraordinary turn. I'm a middle-class woman, living in a cozy apartment in the city, working as an event planner. My life is stable and comfortable, but if I'm honest, it's also pretty unremarkable. I've always dreamed of something more: adventure, excitement, maybe even a bit of romance. Little did I know, my dreams were about to collide with reality in the most unexpected way. It all started at a high-profile charity event I was organizing. The event was a big deal, glitzy, glamorous, and attended by the city's elite. I was in my element, making sure everything ran smoothly, from the seating arrangements to the floral decorations. It was the kind of event that could make or break my career, so I was determined to make it perfect. As I moved through the crowd, checking on details and ensuring guests were happy, I spotted him. Daniel. Tall, impeccably dressed, and exuding an air of effortless confidence. He was surrounded by a group of people, all vying for his attention, but when our eyes met, it felt like the rest of the room disappeared. Daniel is everything I'm not: wealthy, influential, and part of a world I could only dream of. But there was something about him, something that drew me in. As the night went on, we kept catching each other's eye, and eventually, he made his way over to me. "Hi, I'm Daniel," he said, extending his hand with a warm smile. "You must be the genius behind this incredible event." I felt a blush creep up my cheeks as I shook his hand. "I'm Chloe. Thank you, but it's really a team effort." We started talking, and to my surprise, the conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about everything: our interests, our careers, our hopes for the future. Despite our different backgrounds, there was an undeniable connection between us, a spark that felt both exciting and terrifying. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. I went home with a mixture of excitement and nerves, wondering if he would actually call. To my delight, he did. We started texting and calling each other, our conversations deepening with each passing day. Daniel was charming, intelligent, and surprisingly down to earth. He listened when I talked about my work, my dreams, and my fears. He shared stories about his life, giving me glimpses into a world so different from mine. Despite the vast differences in our backgrounds, we found common ground in our values and aspirations. Daniel and I started seeing each other regularly after that first event. Our dates were a whirlwind of romance and adventure: dinners at exclusive restaurants, private art gallery tours, and long walks in beautiful parks. Daniel's world was filled with luxury and excitement, and being with him felt like stepping into a fairy tale. One evening, he surprised me with a candlelit dinner on a rooftop overlooking the city. As we sat under the stars, sipping champagne and sharing stories, I realized just how deeply I was falling for him. His charm, intelligence, and genuine kindness drew me in, and our chemistry was undeniable. Every moment with him felt magical, like we were the only two people in the world. Despite our growing love, there were challenges that came with our relationship. My family, though supportive, was cautious. They knew about Daniel's wealth and influence, and they worried about the differences in our backgrounds. My parents, who had always valued hard work and modest living, were concerned that I might lose myself in his world. "Chloe, we just want you to be careful," my mother said one afternoon over coffee. "Daniel seems wonderful, but make sure you don't forget who you are." "I won't, Mom," I reassured her. "Daniel loves me for who I am, and I love him. We'll make it work." Daniel's family, on the other hand, was dismissive and openly hostile. They saw me as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in their elite social circle. His mother, Margaret, made no effort to hide her disdain. At our first family dinner, she scrutinized me with cold, calculating eyes. "So, Chloe," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "what exactly do you do for a living?" "I'm an event planner," I replied, trying to keep my tone polite and steady. "Interesting," she said, clearly unimpressed. "And how does that fit into your future plans with Daniel?" Her question hung in the air, a stark reminder of the divide between us. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment, but Daniel quickly stepped in. "Mother, Chloe is incredibly talented and successful in her own right," he said firmly. "Her work is important, and I support her completely." Margaret's lips tightened, but she said nothing more. The rest of the evening was tense, with polite conversation masking the underlying hostility. I could feel their judgment, their belief that I wasn't good enough for Daniel, and it weighed heavily on me. Adding to the tension was Daniel's tendency to shower me with extravagant gifts. While I appreciated his generosity, the expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and luxurious trips made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to rely on his wealth or feel like I owed him anything. I valued my independence and worked hard to support myself, and I didn't want that to change. One evening, after he surprised me with an elaborate necklace, I finally spoke up. "Daniel, I appreciate the gifts, but this is too much," I said gently. "I don't need these things to know you love me." He looked hurt, his brow furrowing. "Chloe, I just want to make you happy. I have the means to give you the best of everything. Why can't you just accept it?" "It's not about the gifts," I explained. "I love you for who you are, not what you can give me. I want to maintain my independence, to contribute to our relationship as an equal." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I understand, Chloe, but it's hard for me. This is how I show love. Can't we find a middle ground?" We continued to discuss it, trying to find a balance between his generosity and my desire for independence. It wasn't easy, and it led to several heated arguments. But despite the tension, our love for each other remained strong. We were committed to making it work, even if it meant navigating the challenges that came with our different backgrounds and perspectives. As the months passed, our relationship deepened. We shared countless romantic moments, exploring our mutual interests and learning more about each other. But the differences in our worlds, the pressures from our families, and the struggle to balance independence with love were constant hurdles. We knew that our love was worth fighting for, but we also realized that the road ahead would not be easy. As our relationship grew more serious, it became harder to keep it under wraps. Daniel and I were increasingly seen together at public events, and soon enough, the media began to notice. Gossip columns and tabloids picked up on our story, painting me as the Cinderella figure who had captured the heart of a wealthy prince. At first, it was exciting to see our names in print, but the novelty quickly wore off. The media attention brought scrutiny and judgment from all corners. Daniel's family, already dismissive of our relationship, intensified their efforts to break us apart. His mother, Margaret, was relentless in her disapproval, and she wasn't alone. Daniel's sister, Victoria, took it upon herself to protect the family's reputation by any means necessary. One afternoon, I received a call from a friend who worked in PR. She sounded worried. "Chloe, I hate to tell you this, but there's a nasty rumor going around. People are saying you're only with Daniel for his money." I was stunned. "What? Who would say something like that?" "I've heard it's coming from Victoria. She's been talking to reporters, making it sound like you're just a gold digger. I'm sorry, Chloe." My heart sank. I had always sensed that Victoria didn't like me, but this was a new low. The rumors spread quickly, and soon, everywhere I went, people looked at me with suspicion. The whispers and judgment were unbearable. That evening, I confronted Daniel about it. "Daniel, your sister is spreading lies about me. She's telling everyone I'm only with you for your money. It's humiliating." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll talk to her, Chloe. She's just protective of the family. She doesn't understand how much you mean to me." "Protective? She's ruining my reputation," I snapped, frustration bubbling over. "How can you defend her?" "I'm not defending her," he replied, his voice strained. "But you have to understand, my family is under a lot of pressure. They're used to a certain image, and this relationship, it's a big change for them." "Are you saying I'm not good enough for your family?" I asked, my voice breaking. "No, that's not what I'm saying," he said, stepping closer and taking my hands. "I love you, Chloe. I just need time to make them see what I see." His words were comforting, but the damage was done. The rumors created a rift between us, one that was hard to bridge. I tried to ignore the whispers and focus on our relationship, but it wasn't easy. Things took another turn when Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Melissa, reappeared. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and everything I felt I wasn't. She seemed to know just how to get under my skin, showing up at events and making pointed comments about her past with Daniel. One evening, at a charity gala, she cornered me. "Chloe, darling, I hope you know what you're getting into," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Daniel and I have a lot of history," she continued. "He was quite the charmer. I hope he's been honest with you about everything." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always trusted Daniel, but Melissa's insinuations made me question everything. That night, I confronted him once again. "Daniel, what is Melissa talking about? What haven't you told me?" He looked surprised and a little defensive. "Chloe, Melissa is just trying to cause trouble. We dated years ago and it ended badly. She's trying to sabotage what we have." "But why would she say those things? Why would she make me doubt you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because she's jealous," he replied. "She sees how happy we are and she can't stand it. I wanted to believe him, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The combination of Victoria's rumors and Melissa's provocations made it hard to trust him completely. Our arguments became more frequent, and the tension between us grew. Despite the love we shared, the pressures from his family and the media's scrutiny were taking their toll. I felt like I was constantly on trial, having to prove my worth and defend our relationship. The stress was overwhelming, and I didn't know how much more I could take. One night, after yet another argument, I found myself questioning everything. Was our love strong enough to withstand these challenges? Could we really build a future together when so many forces were working against us? As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that the road ahead would be even harder than I had imagined, and I wasn't sure if we could survive it. The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind of emotions and tension. Daniel and I struggled to maintain our relationship amidst the constant scrutiny and interference from his family. The rumors, the whispers, and Melissa's provocations had driven a wedge between us, and it felt like we were constantly fighting to stay afloat. Then, one morning, I woke up feeling unusually nauseous. At first, I brushed it off as stress, but when the symptoms persisted, I decided to take a pregnancy test. My hands trembled as I waited for the result, and when the little plus sign appeared, my world tilted on its axis. I was pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor, tears streaming down my face. This was not how I had envisioned starting a family. Daniel and I were already struggling, and now we had a baby to consider. The thought of bringing a child into this turmoil was overwhelming. When I told Daniel that evening, his reaction was a mix of shock and joy. "Chloe, this is incredible," he said, pulling me into a tight embrace. "We're going to be parents." "I'm scared, Daniel," I admitted, my voice muffled against his chest. "Our relationship is already so strained. How can we handle this?" "We'll figure it out," he promised, kissing my forehead. "We'll get through this together." His words were comforting, but the reality of our situation was daunting. We decided to keep the pregnancy a secret for the time being, not wanting to add more fuel to the fire of public scrutiny. A few weeks later, Daniel took me to a beautiful park and proposed. It was a picturesque moment, down on one knee, a sparkling ring, and a heartfelt speech about love and commitment. I wanted to say yes, to believe that we could overcome anything together, but doubts gnawed at me. "Daniel, I love you, but I'm not sure if we're ready for this," I said, my heart breaking as I saw the hurt in his eyes. "Chloe, we're having a baby. We need to be a family," he insisted. "I know, but your family, the media, everything, it's all too much. I don't want to rush into marriage just because of the baby," I explained, trying to make him understand. He looked defeated, but he nodded. "Okay, we'll take it one step at a time. But I'm here for you, Chloe. I'm not going anywhere." Despite his reassurances, the pressure from his family continued to mount. Victoria's rumors persisted, and Margaret's cold disapproval was ever present. My family, though supportive, was worried about the constant stress and its impact on my pregnancy. Then came the series of misunderstandings that finally pushed us over the edge. One night, Daniel received a late-night call from Melissa. He assured me it was nothing, but my trust had already been shaken. I overheard snippets of their conversation, and it sounded far too familiar and intimate for comfort. "Daniel, why is Melissa calling you so late?" I demanded once he hung up. "She's going through a tough time and needed someone to talk to," he explained. "There's nothing more to it." But I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't being entirely truthful. The constant interference from his family and Melissa's presence in our lives made it impossible to trust him completely. The breaking point came when I overheard Victoria talking to a reporter, hinting at an impending breakup between Daniel and me. She made it sound like I was the one who couldn't handle the pressure, like I was the one tearing us apart. I felt isolated and betrayed, not just by Victoria, but by the entire situation. That night, Daniel and I had a heated argument. "Your family is sabotaging us, Daniel. They're making it impossible for us to be happy," I cried, my frustration boiling over. "I know, Chloe, but what do you want me to do? They're my family," he replied, equally exasperated. "They're ruining everything. And Melissa, I can't trust you when she's around," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "Melissa is just a friend. Why can't you believe that?" he snapped. "Because it doesn't feel that way. I'm pregnant, and I need stability. I need to know that we're in this together, and right now, I don't feel that," I sobbed. The argument ended with me packing a bag and leaving. I couldn't stay in an environment that felt so toxic and uncertain. I needed space, clarity, and a chance to protect myself and my unborn child. I moved to a small town a few hours away, seeking solace and a fresh start. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, leaving Daniel and the life we had tried to build. But I knew it was the right one. I couldn't keep fighting against the tide of his family's disapproval and the constant media scrutiny. As I settled into my new life, I focused on my pregnancy and preparing for the arrival of my baby. The peace and quiet of the small town were a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. I missed Daniel terribly, but I had to prioritize my well-being and that of my child. Daniel tried to reach out, sending messages and calling, but I needed time to heal and find my footing. Our love had been strong, but the pressures from our families and the misunderstandings between us had been too much to bear. I wasn't sure if we could ever find our way back to each other, but for now, I needed to focus on myself and the new life growing inside me. I quickly secured a job at a local event planning company. The work was familiar, and it helped keep my mind off the turmoil of the past few months. Despite the fresh start, single motherhood loomed large on the horizon, and I knew the road ahead would be tough. Balancing work and pregnancy was exhausting. There were days when I could barely keep my eyes open at my desk, but I pushed through, driven by the need to provide for my baby. My colleagues were supportive, offering to cover for me when I needed rest or doctor's appointments. Slowly, I started to build a new life, one step at a time. When my baby boy Jacob was born, everything changed. Holding him in my arms for the first time was overwhelming. I felt a fierce love and a profound sense of responsibility. As challenging as it was to navigate single motherhood, Jacob became my source of strength. Every sleepless night, every diaper change, and every feeding was a testament to my determination to give him the best life possible. Meanwhile, Daniel was struggling with his own battles. After I left, he realized just how deeply he loved me and how much he regretted not fighting harder for our relationship. The realization hit him hard, and he tried to reach out to me. He sent letters, called repeatedly, and even showed up at my old apartment, only to find I had moved away. I was wary of his attempts to reconnect. The pain of our breakup was still fresh, and I wasn't sure if I could trust him again. Part of me longed to hear his voice, to let him back into my life, but I had to think about Jacob. I needed to be sure that Daniel's intentions were genuine and that he was ready to fight for us, not just because of the baby, but because he truly wanted to be with me. Just as Daniel was trying to navigate his feelings and figure out how to win me back, tragedy struck. His father passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind a complicated will that ignited a bitter inheritance battle among his family. The will divided the family estate in a way that seemed designed to create conflict, and tensions quickly rose. Margaret and Victoria were at the forefront of the battle, each determined to secure their share of the inheritance. Daniel was caught in the middle, torn between his loyalty to his family and his desire to reconcile with me. The stress of the inheritance dispute only compounded his regret over how things had ended between us. One day, I received an unexpected call from Daniel. His voice was heavy with emotion. "Chloe, I know I've hurt you, and I understand why you left, but I need to see you. There's so much I need to say, and I need to meet Jacob. Please, can we talk?" Hearing his voice brought a rush of memories and emotions. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep my distance and protect my heart. But another part of me knew that we needed closure, whether it meant finding a way back to each other or finally moving on. "Okay, Daniel, we can talk," I replied cautiously, "but I need to be sure that you're serious about this." We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in the city. When I saw him walk in, my heart skipped a beat. He looked tired, worn down by the weight of his family's feud and the regret that had been eating at him. But there was also a determination in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. "Chloe," he began, taking my hand in his. "I've made so many mistakes, and I'm sorry. I should have fought harder for us. I let my family and the pressures of my world get in the way, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Daniel, it's not just about fighting harder. We both have a lot to work through. I need to know that you're willing to stand by me, to stand by Jacob, no matter what." He nodded, his grip on my hand tightening. "I am, Chloe. I love you and our son. I want to be a part of your lives, to build a future together. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes." His words were sincere, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We talked for hours, hashing out our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was clear that while we both had a lot of healing to do, there was still a strong foundation of love between us. The next few weeks were filled with tentative steps toward reconciliation. Daniel visited often, spending time with Jacob and helping out wherever he could. Seeing him with our son brought a warmth to my heart, and slowly, the walls I had built around myself began to come down. However, the inheritance battle was still raging, and it tested Daniel's loyalty and resolve. His mother and sister continued to pressure him, making it clear that choosing me and Jacob would mean sacrificing his claim to the family fortune. It was a brutal choice, but Daniel stood firm. One evening, he came to my apartment, looking exhausted but resolute. "Chloe, I've made my decision. My family's wealth and approval mean nothing if it costs me you and Jacob. I'm ready to walk away from it all, if that's what it takes to be with you." His declaration was both heartbreaking and empowering. It showed me just how much he had changed, how deeply he valued our relationship. It wasn't going to be easy, and there were still many challenges ahead, but we were ready to face them together. With Daniel by my side, I felt a renewed sense of strength and determination. Our journey was far from over, and there were still battles to fight, but we were committed to rebuilding our lives, our love, and our family. As we navigated the complexities of trust, forgiveness, and family loyalty, we held on to the hope that love would ultimately guide us through. A few months after Daniel and I started working on our reconciliation, we found ourselves facing yet another challenge. Daniel's cousin was getting married, and we were both invited to the family event. I was hesitant to attend, knowing the tension and hostility from his family, but Daniel assured me that he wanted us to face it together. The wedding was an extravagant affair, held at a lavish estate that screamed opulence. As soon as we arrived, the familiar feeling of being an outsider crept in. Daniel held my hand tightly, offering silent reassurance as we navigated through the crowd. As we mingled with the guests, old emotions and unresolved issues began to resurface. It didn't take long before we found ourselves in a heated confrontation with Victoria. She approached us with a thinly veiled smirk, her eyes glinting with malice. "Chloe, Daniel," she greeted, her voice saccharine sweet. "It's so nice to see you both here. I'm surprised you made it, considering everything." I felt a wave of anger and hurt, but I kept my composure. "We're here to support the family, Victoria. Despite everything, we still care." "Is that so?" she replied, raising an eyebrow. "Or are you here to stake your claim, Chloe? Still trying to fit into a world you don't belong to?" Daniel stepped in, his voice firm. "Victoria, that's enough. Chloe belongs here just as much as anyone. We're a family." Victoria's smirk faded, replaced by a look of disdain. "Family? She's torn you apart from us, Daniel. You've changed, and not for the better." The confrontation drew the attention of other guests, and I felt the weight of their judgmental stares. The emotions I had tried to suppress came flooding back, and I found myself questioning everything again. "Daniel, maybe this was a mistake," I said quietly, tears welling up in my eyes. He shook his head, his grip on my hand tightening. "No, Chloe, we're not letting them win." As the evening progressed, Daniel and I found a quiet corner to talk. The heated confrontation with Victoria had left us both emotionally raw, and we needed to address our lingering feelings and unresolved issues. "Chloe, I'm sorry for everything you've had to endure because of my family," Daniel said, his voice filled with regret. "I love you, and I don't want to lose you again." "I know, Daniel," I replied, my voice trembling. "But it's so hard to keep fighting against their judgment and hostility. It feels like they'll never accept me." "They don't have to accept you, Chloe. They need to accept that you're the woman I love and the mother of my child. That's what matters," he said, his eyes pleading. Just as we were about to leave the event, Daniel's uncle, who had had a bit too much to drink, let slip a family secret that had been buried for years. It turned out that Daniel's father had an illegitimate child from an affair decades ago. This revelation shook Daniel to his core, making him reevaluate the pressures and expectations his family had placed on him. In the following days, Daniel confronted his mother and sister about the secret. The ensuing arguments were intense, filled with accusations and denials. Margaret's veneer of control shattered as she tried to explain why they had kept the secret hidden, fearing it would destroy their family's reputation. The revelation gave Daniel a new perspective on the pressures he had faced. He realized that his family's expectations were built on a foundation of lies and hypocrisy. He knew he had to make a choice between conforming to their standards and following his heart. As if the family turmoil wasn't enough, a scandal involving Daniel's business surfaced. Previously, a trusted associate of his cousin Noah, had been embezzling funds and had framed Daniel to cover his tracks. The scandal threatened to destroy everything Daniel had worked for, and the media was quick to pounce on the story. When the news broke, I could see the despair in Daniel's eyes. His business, his reputation, everything he had built was on the line. Despite our troubled past, I knew I had to support him. "Daniel, we'll get through this," I said, taking his hand. "We'll fight this together." I don't know if I can, Chloe, he replied, his voice heavy with defeat. It feels like everything is falling apart. You're not alone, I reassured him. We'll find a way to clear your name and rebuild what's been lost. We've come this far, and we won't give up now. With renewed determination, we faced the scandal head-on. We hired a team of lawyers and investigators to uncover the truth and clear Daniel's name. It was a grueling process, filled with setbacks and challenges, but we refused to back down. Through it all, our love for each other grew stronger. The trials we faced tested our relationship, but they also solidified our bond. Daniel's family continued to be a source of stress, but we learned to stand together, united against the forces trying to tear us apart. In the end, the truth about the embezzlement scandal came to light. Daniel's cousin was arrested, and Daniel's name was cleared. The victory was bittersweet, as it had cost us dearly, but it also proved that we could withstand anything as long as we had each other. As we stood together, looking out at the city skyline, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were ready to face them together. Our love had been tested and tried, but it had emerged stronger and more resilient. Daniel turned to me, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. Chloe, thank you for standing by me. I couldn't have done this without you. I smiled, squeezing his hand. We're a team, Daniel. We always will be. And with that, we took our first steps into a future that, despite its uncertainties, held the promise of love, strength, and a family built on truth and resilience. With the scandal behind us, Daniel and I started to rebuild our lives. The ordeal had brought us closer, and we were determined to protect our love from any further harm. However, Daniel's family remained a persistent thorn in our side, their disapproval and manipulation threatening our happiness. One evening, after yet another heated argument with his mother and sister, Daniel made a decision. He realized that to truly be with me, he needed to break free from his family's toxic influence once and for all. The next day, he called a press conference to make a public declaration. Standing before the cameras, with reporters hanging on his every word, Daniel took a deep breath. Today, I want to set the record straight, he began. I love Chloe, and I will not let anyone or anything come between us. This is my life, and I choose to live it with the woman I love. To that end, I am breaking all ties with my family's business and influence. It's time for a new beginning, free from manipulation and control. The announcement sent shockwaves through the media and his family. Margaret and Victoria were furious, but Daniel stood firm. He had chosen love over the pressure and expectations of his family, and I couldn't have been prouder. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were ready to face it together. Daniel's public declaration and our victory had solidified our bond, proving that our love could withstand even the greatest challenges. We had faced betrayal, manipulation, and false accusations, but we had emerged stronger and more resilient. With Daniel's family finally out of our lives and the truth on our side, we looked forward to building a future filled with love, trust, and the promise of a new beginning. Our journey had been tumultuous, but it had also shown us the depth of our commitment to each other. As we walked away from the courthouse, hand in hand, we knew that no matter what came next, we would face it together. Our love had been tested and tried, but it had emerged unbreakable, ready to conquer whatever challenges lay ahead.